Next, from the state capitol, former state representative Cathy Rick talks with us about the need for funding services for children. As the new director of the group Voices for Illinois Children, we hear what challenges the state financial crisis is having on youth services. This runs about 8 minutes. Well, former Representative Cathy Rick, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And last we saw you, you were a member of the House. Tell us what you're doing these days.
Sure, I'm happy to. It's great to see you again, and it's great to be back in the Capitol. But I'm here in my new role as president for Voices for Illinois Children. So Voices is the statewide policy and advocacy organization that really pays attention to issues that affect children and families.
The person who had the job before you is now the chief of staff to the governor. Does that influence your viability of the organization one way or the other?
No, actually it was a great move for Governor Quinn to choose Jerry Sturmer as his chief of staff, but Jerry had already announced his retirement prior to being pegged for the chief of staff position. And as a not-for-profit, nonpartisan advocacy organization, we work with all members of the General Assembly and all legislative leaders, and of course we want them to understand the scope of the issues for children and families in Illinois. And right now, of course, we're very heavily engaged in the work around a responsible budget solution.
Tell us a bit more about the organization, what its mission is, and how you go about achieving your agenda.
Sure. Well, Voices for Illinois Children, again, works across all areas to promote issues that are important for children and families. So our previous successes have been around policy for early childhood care and education, and we work in partnerships and collaborations. So we have great partners in the ounce of prevention and Illinois Action for Children and many other organizations that come together to really work on our shared issues and concerns. And right now, one of the lesser known aspects of the work at Voices is our budget and tax policy initiative, where we really engage in specific budget analysis and an understanding of the ramifications of fiscal crises. And the advantage that we have for our budget and tax policy initiative is that we're part of a national network. The Centers for Budget and Policy Priorities guides a lot of our work, and we've benefited from their understanding of the national recession, the impact on states, the solutions other states have looked to, and the messaging that is so critical so that the residents and taxpayers of Illinois understand what's at stake and what elements will need to be included in a solution.
What kind of solutions? I mean, well, give us a state of the state, if you would, of children in Illinois right now. Given the budget, how is that impacting you or impacting the kids?
Well, this is a very timely question. We've just released our Kids Count data book, again, part of a national network that is sponsored by the Casey Foundation that provides funding for each state to take an in-depth look at the data that affects children and families. This year, our book was focused on children and families in a time of economic crisis. So it was very relevant, and the data actually goes back to 2008. That's the most current data available. So it doesn't even really reflect the full impact of the recession in 2009. But what the data tells us, it really documents the state for children. And right now, the child poverty rate in Illinois is 17%. The Brookings Institution projects that that trend will grow over the next 2 years, and so we're looking at a rate of 22% by 2012. That's really significant when you realize that 1 out of every 5 children in Illinois will be living in poverty. So that's the distressing news that we know out of the data. Kids face a lifetime of struggles because of the economic difficulties their families are experiencing now. But on the bright side, we also know how to support those children and families, and we know the positive investments that Illinois has made in early childhood care and education pays off in a child's ability to enter school ready to learn and then be prepared for a job that pays a decent wage and have good health care outcomes. So we know the right things to do. We just have to ensure that as we look to the fiscal crisis right here in Illinois, that we have adequate revenues to invest in the programs that we know are important.
You know, lastly, as your work as a former House member, you know where those House members are, where they're coming from, and they're bombarded with 100 or 1,000 different issues and coming in all different directions from agriculture to business. How does your background as a House member help you communicate with your former colleagues in stressing what you're trying to get across to them?
Well, of course I can relate to their needs to respond to their constituents, and everyone is hurting in this economy. It's a difficult time for everyone, and everyone is struggling with the right answers to fill a $13 billion deficit in the state of Illinois. And so what I hope to offer to my former colleagues and to everyone in Illinois, we're very, very involved in making sure people understand $13 billion is too big to tax your way out of or to cut your way out of. And so the solution is really going to be found in raising adequate revenue through a modernization of our tax system so that when the economy recovers, we capture that growth so we can get back on the track for fiscal stability. But more importantly, we need to generate revenue in a fair way. And so we're supportive of proposals that provide tax credits for people who at the lower and middle income levels and property tax credits so that as we have more state dollars to spend on education funding, then people will not have to pay for their schools strictly out of their property tax base. So we hope that when people understand where the problem comes from in the national recession, in overspending in Illinois, and in some reforms that are needed in Illinois, they will see their way to know that we need a balanced approach, we need to raise adequate revenues in a fair way, we need to have efficiencies and spending controls, and we need some reforms to restore confidence for the people who are going to be paying these revenues.
Former Representative Cathy Rick, Voices for Illinois Children, am I saying that right? We thank you for joining us, and maybe we can follow up with you on some of these issues as the year goes by.
I'll look forward to working with you. Thanks again. Thanks.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.